Isn't that amazing how the power of the tongue, as the Bible says, is so powerful. Melody brought that up, you brought that up. And I think if we look in our lives, it is there. So we must always speak good to our children or into their lives so that they become better persons, better people. Daisy?
So I was raised by a very strict mom, but I think I have a bit of the way you were raised and a bit of the way you were raised. So my mother was strict. My mother was hella strict. My mom used to give my 28-year-old sister a curfew, and which meant that when I turned 21, my dream was to move out. My mother was like, because I was like, I'm almost 21, any day now. And, I was looking forward to like the independence. And mom was like, you're going nowhere, you're staying here. And I'm like, wait, like, isn't that the law? Like 21 means. So my mom was very, very strict. And looking back, I understand why. It was a fear of having a girl child, anything can go wrong. And I would always ask her, like, Mom, don't you trust me? And it was always, it's not that I don't trust you, it's like, don't trust everybody else that's out there, And I'm like, but don't you think you've put the lessons in me that will allow me to go out there and make good decisions? But for her, it was always like, I don't know. So I was a tomboy, and I grew up in a small town. And like you were saying, like, people would see me hanging around these boys, and they'd just assume that I was dating these boys. And for me, I just saw myself as one of the boys. And it took my mother a really long time to adapt and to actually believe that they were just my friends. And whereas with my dad, I think I got a lot of my parenting skills from my dad. Only because, so similar to what you were saying, only because like my dad would never hit me, ever. My dad would actually just sit me down and be like, so when you put that glass right at the edge of the table, what did you think would happen? And then you're like, oh, right. And then you sit and you're like, okay, maybe I won't do that again. So they were always, he always kind of like made you think about what you did. And it would always be like, he gives you like 3 chances to be silly. And then the third chance, like, look, this is your third chance to make the right decision. You're like, okay, but like for me, it never got to the third the third time I'd do the same thing. It would be like, I've done it once and I know not to do it again. Whereas I think with my mom, it was almost like she just like started pulling her hairs out, like, oh my God, this child. And it was funny because I'd always think, just trust me a little bit more, which I don't know if she ever did, because I lost her when I was 21. But I remember almost all her lessons. And I appreciate now that raising a girl child is a lot scarier than I suppose raising a boy child.
True.
Because you're just worried about that boy child's body, whereas being a girl, you're worried about and I see it with my nieces, where I'll be somewhere with my nieces and suddenly all these men are looking at them and I'm just thinking, oh my God, leave my baby alone. But it's I appreciate my mom's fears, I appreciate my dad's lessons, but I think being a parent now, and someone like you were saying, your parents say stuff over your life. Like my mom, I remember asking my mom once about why she was a certain way, and she just started laughing. And she goes, "Do you know what the baby pig told the mommy pig?" And she walked away laughing. And I was like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
And I have a son who is me, and anything I say to my son, he will question. And if the answer is not adequate, he'd be like, Mommy, I did the research on this. This doesn't make sense. What you're telling me doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, but baby, I'm trying to tell you this. Like, and he's like, but Mommy, make it make sense. It's not making sense. And I'm like, you know what? Do it. And that's the only way I've seen that my son learns now. But what I miss the most about my mom is she didn't get a chance to eat my son. And for me, that is one of the biggest losses, because I know she would have just eaten him up and probably stolen him from me. And that was her way of showing love. So, yeah. So I suppose as difficult a child I was for my mother, and I was difficult because I just didn't understand why she didn't understand me. I was like, I don't understand why you don't. But it turns out she was the only person that understood me because we were exactly the same. And I think because we were exactly the same, those were her fears. Like you were saying about the temper. I remember I had a mean temper. I'd like black out with my temper. And when I'd come to, it'd be like I've thrown shoes at my brothers. And I'm just like, the craziness. But she was like, oh my goodness, you're just like me. I'm like, oh, okay. So I think I wish she was around for me to say thank you. Because when I was being given curfew at 21, it didn't make any sense. But I suppose I'll be giving my son a curfew at 21 if he's still with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Isn't it amazing how, and I say this to a lot of my friends lately who are either, their parents are in a sick state or, or they've lost their parents and some that still have their parents and are not appreciating their parents enough, well, in my eyes, through my lens, right? And I say to them, you know what? You need to treasure your parents while they are alive because when they're gone, they're gone. And it's a lonely, lonely space. There's no one to reach to call out to say, how, you cry on your pillow and you cry yourself to sleep because there's no one else who can get you as much as your mother and your father can get you. Tiego, I want to bring you in and to again congratulate you on your coming bundle of joy. I think the next few weeks, it's 19 weeks now, 40 weeks might seem far, but time flies, we know, right? We've had a year of the pandemic and you look back, you're like, where did the year go? People are still lamenting, we're still in 2019. We don't want to acknowledge that 2020 happened because of what happened, what happened in that time frame. I'm sure you have some thoughts about how you're going to bring up your child. I mean, I think back when I was expecting my daughter, firstborn child, always you mollycoddle them, you always have this best wishes for them. I don't know what has come up in your mind around your good news.
Looking at mommy.
Soon to be granny. And we're all going to be the granny to that baby. We like, I can't wait. Babies are cute. So just maybe share with us if you have any thoughts about how you could parent differently and what that means for you.
So I think just listening to everybody's comments and thoughts and their experiences, but also taking into account my upbringing and my relationship with my mom. For a long time, I actually didn't want to have children because I thought to myself, like, my mom is such an incredible mom. I cannot be half the mother that she is. And I'm like, I'm not even going to try. Like, I'm just going to sit this one out. And she's just so incredible. I just don't know how I do it, But even with that thought, because we've been together for so long, she was really young when she had me, but you realize that parents are human. Parents are imperfect. As Abigail said, there's no school for parents, which is actually like such an important thing to note because people think, oh yes, you have this maternal instinct, things will just happen, but parents are also just human. They're also still learning as they're going along. So, and there is no perfect way to raise a child. All of you have pretty different experiences ranging from strict parents to open-minded parents. So, I mean, for me, the takeaway would really to try and, also just take from my child and learn from my child on how to, create the best environment for them instead of creating a mini me and trying to, put them in a box. So, there is no right or wrong way, and it will be a continuous learning experience, and I'm just going to embrace that.
Oh, yes.
Very good.
Thank you so much for that, Diego. And like the fact that you are open to whatever happens. Whatever will be. And that's how we grow, right? When we more open to new possibilities. I want to bring our millennials here, our dear daughters, pretty daughters.
Flattery will get you nowhere.
There we go. The millennials of the day. So, having heard what has been said, what has opened up for you? What insights have you gotten out of this? I know it's maybe a bit of a putting you on the spot because I'm your mother child. And
I have to sleep yet.
Yeah, you have to sleep yet.
Still be honest. A couple of
But
nights.
it's an opportunity for you to be open-minded and just be frank.
Yeah.
You first.
Okay.
You first.
I think a lot of your experiences are not the same, but similar to what we also go through, or in my own experience. I think there's some of the things that you've said that I can relate to, and I can see it differently, where before I'd see it as from a spoiled perspective, I think I can say that. And when I hear you speak, I hear you come with the wisdom, come with the experience and everything as well. I think sometimes it's very weird as well, because when you speak your experience or when you share your experience, you forget that when your child goes through it, that you went through it too. So it's sometimes hard for myself. I'm not going to pull you into it. It's sometimes hard for myself because I see you share experiences with each other. But when I share an experience with you, it seems that you forget that there's a different perspective, there's a different way of doing it, there's more to the story, there's a whole world out there, essentially. But I think sometimes if I had to look at the lessons that my mother teaches me, I think they're very strong lessons, so I carry them with me. There's small lessons that I think today are not important, but tomorrow I'll be like, listen to that. I know my mom shares her mother's wisdom with me as well. So my mom's also strict. I know she's very bubbly with you guys, but it's a different story with me. So I think sometimes to see her in this light, or to see her the way that she is with you, is to remind myself that she is human and she's also learning, and I'm also learning. But it's nice to know that at the end of the day, we're not doing it alone. And I think that's the most important part, because when you're growing up or when you're becoming the woman you want to be, it's not just you marching through the world fighting alone. There's people, well, now I know, or I'm reminded that there are people that I can also lean on, and there's people that she leans on. And together we can just build something good and be greater people. So I think I'm very thankful for this experience and for being here and to see the different perspectives and to be reminded of everything that you guys have learned and what I've learned. And
To have grace for your mom.
Wonderful.
Of grace.
Shares?
Well, everything that everyone has said resonated a little bit with me. So from when I was born, I'm the first from my father's side. So when I was born, I was this little gem. I was a princess. My mom is one of 8. So when I was born, my mom was a late bloomer from her mother's side. I was the perfect grandchild. My grandmother and I are best friends, just like my mom and I are. I was never hit as a child. My mom spoke to my brother and I. She still does that. And because my parents got divorced early on in life, my mom and I are like partners in life. She's my mom, but she's also like my partner. We make decisions together. She teaches me a lot, and I think sometimes I inform her about things that she doesn't know. And my mom's very open. She's not closed-minded. If she feels like there's a gap in something, she will rather ask for information and she listens to me. As a child, I wasn't naughty or I wasn't disobedient at all. I was the perfect A student because I wanted to be like her. To me, my mom was my superhero. She still is. My grandmother as well. Like my granny's 87, and we chat about, like, I don't know. I ask people questions all the time. I ask people like, how old were you when you got married? My grandmother got married at 16. I was like, why did she do that? She's like, oh, she met this guy at a wedding and they said she must get married. I'm like, okay, why? I was that kind of child. I'd ask why. And like today she tells me like, oh, if I could get divorced, I would have. But back then they would take your children. So that's where I get like my feminist side. My grandfather passed on when I was 17. And since then she's been alone. But obviously she misses my grandfather, but she's living her best life. She's very independent. She does what she wants. She's a farmer, like her. And even though my mom is not the oldest like sibling, they also have a great partnership, like the partnership I have with my mom. And that's one thing I really appreciate about her. She's like, sometimes I do make faults or whatever, but she speaks to me. She never like gets mad at me. Sometimes I get a little bit irritated with her because if we have a conversation about something, it's finished. Sometimes I still have emotional attachment to it. I think it's just the black way of doing things.
Black way.
Like if she's spoken about something, it's like it's finished.
Done.
Let's move on. I'm like, no, I'm still not done. You're doing
on
it.
it.
Yeah, you're doing it again. Like. As, I don't know, like, you know my mom maybe the longest with the book club. My mom is not like a person who has a lot of friends. She doesn't like to go out a lot. Like, we do a lot of things together. And for the past years since I've moved back home, we're a lot closer. But wherever we go, we'll still be close. And I really appreciate that about her, that she's very open, she's loving, she's caring, and she puts a lot of effort into relationships. She doesn't have a lot of relationships, but if she values you, she puts an effort. And one day, if I do have children, that's the kind of mother that I want to be. A mom that cares, who's invested, and I really appreciate that about her.
Yeah.
She's
Excellent.
Yeah, she's my mom and my dad.
Mom and dad.
Shez, thank you so much for your insights. I think we are now at the end of our conversation, and we want to just get a couple of concluding remarks. And I want to bring you in, Varai. You haven't had a chance to speak. Vasta, if you are keen to also say something in closing, you're welcome to. But Varai, please.
Yeah, thanks. So ladies, thank you so much. I really appreciate being part of this wonderful conversation. My daughter is only turning 13 in a few months' time, so I'm really listening and learning. And that's really great. I grew up in a family of 8. I'm the 7th of, I've got 6 sisters and I'm the last girl. So my family was very different from the stories that all of you have shared. And just listening to you guys, I'm just thinking how lucky you were to be in families where you had a present mother who was either strict or loving, and you could see that. For me, my experience with my mom was she was always pregnant and giving birth and waiting for this boy that never came and only came at number 8. I actually tease my brother sometimes to say that if I had been a boy, he would not exist. So I grew up in a family with an angry father who was looking for this boy and always fighting my mother, and I would hear them fight all the time, and he's accusing her of not being able to bear a son, and he was going out to other women to look for someone who would give him the boy that he wanted. So out of wedlock, he had 4 boys, but in the house, the boy just wouldn't come. So I have, thoughts of, I always remember, the screams. My mother would cry. Sometimes even with my father being away, she was an unhappy woman, and she was not there for us because of issues that she was having with my dad. And when I was 8, my mom passed on because, of course, she was hurting. She had 8 kids to look after. My dad was was not present at all. So I feel in my life sometimes I overcompensate for that with my kids, even the kids of my friends, because I want to be that present mom who listens, who's there, and who gives so much attention. So I just believe life is a learning process. We all go through different experiences, and it's good that we're sharing those experiences and open and honest to each other, because we learn from what we've all gone through. So I just want us to continue with this kind of conversations, be close to each other, help our kids grow in an environment where they know that if they can't speak to mom, they've got mom's friend to speak to, or mom's sister to speak to, or even us as friends, just knowing that we've got each other and we can support each other through life. I think that's really important.
Wow, that's so nice.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And on that note, I think we call it a day. It has been wonderful. Handshake. Thank you,
Thank you
everybody.
so much.